So for this last session of the day, we'll be diving into the future of DAOs financial management with Dexter Tortoriello, who's head of FWB's internal product development, and Alex Zinder, who's Ledger's VP for Enterprise Solutions. Dexter, Alex, welcome to Ledger Open.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Could you maybe start by giving us a quick introduction about yourselves?
Yeah, so my name is Dexter. I'm one of the co-founders of Friends with Benefits, which is a cultural DAO. And we center around the creative intersection of crypto and whether it be music, arts, journalism, kind of any creative industry. We're sort of bridging the gap for creators into Web3. As I did about 10 years in the music industry, and Trevor, our founder, also has a long history in the music industry, and so we kind of like came at this with this very simple idea of a tokenized community that could help, you know, kind of like get this idea working with creators who weren't necessarily interested in the financial aspects. So a year later and several thousand members, and we're at a place where this is actually becoming a reality, and we've seen the space obviously grow into something that will bring us to Paris to talk about it. So that's where we're at today.
Last panel of the day. You guys are resilient.
Yeah.
I love it. We'll try to make this interesting. So I'm Alex. I'm responsible for Ledger Enterprise Solutions. To kind of put it very clearly, I think Ledger empowers individuals, right, to interact with distributed networks. At Ledger Enterprise, we do the same for organizations, right? So we empower organizations to interact with distributed networks. I've been in the financial industry for about 10 years or so, primarily working with NASDAQ, and I joined Ledger in February.
Awesome. So Alex, this year has been incredible for crypto. And what kind of ignited that bull run at the beginning of the year was massive adoption, institutional adoption. Suddenly you had banks, funds, public companies investing in crypto. But it felt as though all of these institutions were kind of experimenting with their own recipe of custodying and securing their crypto investments. And it feels like this is one of the main friction facing higher institutional adoption. How are you thinking about that?
Great question. Actually, I was thinking about this during the day today, and there's some phenomenal content here today. So I want to actually connect the dots to the first panel from this morning around NFTs. There was a really cool analogy that I wrote it down. Is so somebody said that empowering an artist to drop sovereign, which love that term, it's incredible, is like giving them keys to their own printing factory. Right, so like really clear, great analogy. But then you kind of have to ask yourself, okay, well, what happens if you want to print 1,000 pieces of art? Right, you need a team. So with a team, you can no longer give somebody just the keys, you need key cards. Right, what if you need 2 factories? What about 10, right? You need a system to manage those key cards. Then you need to manage your inventory. Your inventory is valuable, you need to protect your inventory. On and on and on and on, right? So what we really have is a challenge of scale, fundamentally. I think custody is important, but to me, like, you know, I'm from the financial industry, I understand custody, it's a legacy term. Like, it doesn't fit what we're trying to do now with distributed networks and with this industry overall. What we really need is models, right, and frameworks for how we empower organizations and people to collaborate and to collectively interact with these distributed networks and with these new models that are evolving today. I think that's an important kind of frame of mind of thinking about it is, you know, we really want to focus on interactions and collaborations and create systems and tools that allow us to scale.
Absolutely. And Dexter, you know, FWB is a cultural DAO that is all about, you know, creative coordination at scale and shared ownership of ideas and outcome. You know, when I spoke to Alex Zang, the mayor of FWB, who's supposed to be somewhere around here, he described DAOs as being a Facebook group with a shared bank account. So how are you thinking about, you know, managing that bank account from a security and decentralization standpoint?
Yeah, so our DAO operates obviously around the treasury, which we run on a Gnosis multisig, and that's sort of that's how we started when we launched our token, and so that's been obviously like very well very foolproof. We have several signers. It's a decentralized group. Beyond that, like technical step, there's this sort of like governance and community sort of collaboration piece of it that's like way harder to nail than keeping a secure wallet safe. And that's the part that I think that we're always sort of like balancing and working with and trying to adjust for, because obviously we all watch the space kind of go from 0 to 100 throughout this. I don't know if we're at 100 yet, but with it comes this idea of like, oh, this wallet that we've had since the start, that like maybe at the start of it had a little bit of money in it, and it becomes this thing that suddenly becomes it's a tool. It's our sort of fuel to do what we need to do. And as a DAO, our only priority is to serve the community. And so when we're building products and we're building tools and we're building things, when we're spending from the treasury, we should be spending for our community. And so that's where things like snapshot votes come in, and alternate governance systems, ways getting away from one token, one vote, to potentially one person, one vote. Or I think I was talking to someone, was it you yesterday, about this? About potentially even like time horizons being like adding weight to a vote. If you've held the token without selling it for X amount of months, like there's so many exciting things that we can do now that offer an entire community a way to interact with the treasury and to pitch things into it, and so yeah, that's really where we're at right now. There's a lot of exploration going on, and I think that a lot of people are building tools that we've been sort of like popping in and out of and seeing what works and what doesn't. And there's some really, really exciting things being built that I'm excited to get my hands on.
Absolutely. Alex, let me throw the ball back into your court. How do you think, from a tech and user experience standpoint, we could help DAOs, managing their finances?
Yeah, I think, the opportunity is huge, right? Because right now it's kind of, it's all manual process, and a lot of people have to be involved. The model doesn't scale great. And, kind of in the spirit of distributed ecosystems, right, and managing the stuff in a distributed way, what we want to make sure that we do is we enable organizations to do self-custody. Right, so we don't want the trend to move towards you guys outsourcing this to another financial institution that can provide that as a service, right? So fundamentally, like, we really have to be extremely good at making this process as easy as possible. I was looking at your website earlier, and you guys are hiring a head of treasury,
yes,
right? So it's an open position, right? Obviously, you guys are growing. Yeah, anybody that understands treasury, please apply. Soliciting. But so we want to make that person's job as easy as possible, yes, right? And we want to make sure that you guys and institutions like yourselves, organizations like yourselves, are in a position to have 20 people, right, in that treasury department, all working together to make sure that your community has those direct touch points and those types of interactions. Because I think what's fundamentally different now in this space is that these aren't just networks of information anymore. We're putting value there, but now people have to interact with that value, right? And interacting with value is more challenging because it's valuable than interacting with information, right? And we just don't have the tools today to do that fundamentally. And it's a super exciting space for me because I'm a bit on the older side at this point. We've kind of seen the web create this new distribution of information and new channels, right? And that industry has obviously evolved considerably. Some might say in a centralized way, right? Now we're putting value on these networks, and we have an opportunity to evolve in a decentralized way, but you need the right tools for that. So we can't really miss this one, because if we don't build the right tools to enable self-sovereign interaction, self-custody for both individuals and organizations, somebody's going to do it in the way that has been done before, right? So the opportunity is there. We have to be extremely focused on making it as accessible and as easy to use for everybody as possible.
And yeah, absolutely. And speaking of the future and scalability and accessibility, FWB is probably the most successful example of a cultural DAO out there. You guys have had an incredible year, one in which you've invested in real life events. You launched your Web3 ticketing product, The Gatekeeper. You've also launched your editorial platform. So to Alex's earlier point about scalability, how are you guys thinking about scalability, and how does that tie into your future vision of what FWB could become as a cultural DAO?
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, so the scale of kind of friends with benefits has been this sort of ballooning and kind of like it inflates really, really large at some moments, like we've seen in the last 3 months, say. And we've received a lot of attention, and so it allowed us to sort of use some of the funds that we had kind of raised and secured and to start projects. And so it's funny to think about the fact that we kind of have started almost like, maybe 8 or 9 companies that in a traditional framework would be their own thing. And there would be 30 people working on this one product. Like Gatekeeper, for instance, is a Web3 ticketing app. So if you hold Friends with Benefits, our token, or if another, like, let's say, another DAO wants to use our product, it would be their token. They can do an event where you can come flash your wallet. It's a QR code. It checks your wallet balance. If you have the tokens, you get in. And so it kind of brings about this ticketless system, which is really great. The moment we launched it, we started getting inbound requests to use it, and it wasn't a white labeled product at the time. It was our prototype for our community, for our party. But it was really powerful to start thinking about like, well, how can we actually move this down the line? Like what's the scalable way to take a product like this that starts out as this like great idea that everyone's excited about and the community has bought into, and they say like this is actually like we like using this. How do we make sure that the funds can move in that direction and that can become what it eventually needs to be or can be? There's potential. So we're playing around with lots of different models, but a lot of them involve like sort of creating a payment channel, creating sort of like an allocation of funds for this, and then like setting up a team around it, and almost like a DAO, like almost like running it with its own governance system. And that gets really interesting because then you can see these things that are sort of like launched as seeds. If they start growing on their own, ideas are magnetic. People just start collecting around them, and as to your point, like the financial side of this there's a delineation between finance and culture that in like what we're doing doesn't actually matter as much as it does everywhere else, because the culture is tied like inextricably to the finance part. And so that's essentially we're looking at these solutions to be able to like empower our community to take ownership of things and run with them. And in my opinion, that's all going to start with Rails, and I'm also not necessarily fully convinced that the user experience is like ready for this yet. But that's I think what we're all building on is building like a system and a set of sort of principles that we can let people run wild with without this technical expertise, without this deep knowledge of like hardcore wallet security stuff, and then the experimentation can sort of take on its own life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel that culture will be like kind of the main on-ramp into crypto. How are you thinking about that from a future, milestones perspective? How are you going to be leveraging that, very interesting niche between crypto and culture in the future? Are there like any new products that you will be launching? Will you be like doubling down on in real life events?
I think our real life events, like all of our IRL events, have been incredible. Like that's been such a cool learning experience, especially in the midst of a pandemic. Being able to kind of like when we have these moments where things are okay, to be able to actually do these IRL events, and then it's we have thousands of people in a Discord server who've just never met. Like Alex, our mayor, who I'd been working with for close to 8 months, we just met in real life a couple weeks ago, and there's thousands of other people I've never met. So it does feel like this really, really beautiful cultural moment when everyone comes together. It's like we know each other by avatars. We know each other by like usernames, and it's a whole new experience building this level of trust with people. Well, I mean, it's not even trust. It's like sort of the trust is removed so you can kind of build this shared experience. And that's what's really important to Friends with Benefits, and I think a lot of DAOs will. If you're dealing with culture, it's always going to be community first, and so all of our products are going to serve this one community, and the culture of what we're building essentially is our valuation. Because I look at like essentially every membership in FWB I look at as someone who is valuing the information and the connections that they're making inside of our system or in our world. They're valuing it obviously more than US dollars or whatever it could be, and at different times of the year, it can be wildly different prices. But when the price goes up it does have this weird effect where we have to start thinking about like, oh, how do we actually serve the community? Are we gating people out of this? Are we, have we become a place where, we're not going to get the best minds in culture, the people who are actually going to move culture because they're just, not able to afford it. And so, yeah, so we have a lot of different questions about that kind of things. And I think that like culture is just generally like something that we look at as, it's like a native instinct. Like when our culture starts sliding, we can always tell. Our old community members start making a bunch of noise. We have lots of different metrics, and we have a token instead of an NFT-based sort of DAO, which a lot of people have moved over to. But we do get this sort of granular view of like how people are treating it. We have a membership price, and then anything above that is essentially a speculative bet on this, or whatever it might be. And so you can kind of see people in real time just start to like react to what you're doing and react to your community. And it used to just be 4 or 5 of us making decisions and moving things, and now it's close to 80 or 90 people, and then thousands of people in a community, and it's like any one of them can go get on stage and talk like this, and that's a really beautiful thing. But it's also like it's a part of our culture, and I think it's something that we're all like looking to protect, because finance has always had a negative effect on culture when it kind of hits all at once. And I think we're trying and partially succeeding at being the opposite of that. Like that's the goal, is for finance to not ruin the culture.
I love that. And Alex, back to institutions. As we said, this year has been incredible. We hope 2022 is going to be as great as 2021 or even greater. For Ledger's enterprise solutions, how are you looking at the future from facilitating this institutional adoption, from the framework standpoint that you mentioned at the beginning, but as well from a future vision of how Ledger's enterprise solution will be developing with the product and of course with the network that you're building?
It's a really great question. I think it really it needs to be driven by the industry itself, right? Like, so we need to be extremely diligent and observant of the different trends. I think the models will change and evolve. I think that's a great thing. I really like that we kind of arrived at this interesting point of like convergence of value and culture. That's going to be critical, because if you think about it that way, it's not just financial products, right? It's not just financial capabilities that we want to enable. It's really, like I said before, it's interactions and collaboration, right? For us at Ledger, we're obviously extremely invested in scaling this industry, right? Scaling the distributed network space, scaling crypto, working with DAOs to make sure that scales successfully and these models become much more widely adopted, right? So that's really the primary focus. And I think it kind of goes back to what you said before, right? It's, the pain point is custody, right? But that's today's pain point. That's not tomorrow's pain point. People gravitate towards it because it has a name. But I think the opportunity is really just an incredible world is going to evolve, and we need to be there to support it and nurture it, basically, right? That's kind of how I see it. There's no really super clear roadmap, right? We need to develop our knowledge, our capabilities. We have a lot of our technologists in the room here, right? We need to build that skill set up so we can support this growing emergent space. And from a kind of financial and culture standpoint, I think it resonates with me. I was at NASDAQ for 10 years, so traditional finance, but you work in Times Square, right? In the NASDAQ building on the tower, like companies go public there. Right, and to me that was always such a missed opportunity, because one, it is a cultural event, right? Like you see it on the TV, like the Americans in the room probably understand it. Exactly, you ring the bell, right? So it is a cultural event, but the opportunity is really missed because it then becomes a financial event, right? But if you think about it, right, owning shares in a company is probably one of the most user loyalty actions that somebody can take, right? Like if you use a product and then you go and buy shares of the company that produces that product, that's the most loyal you can be to an organization or to any entity. And I think the DAO model actually takes that to the next level.
Yeah, I really like that because there's this I mean, the model of exiting to your own community is becoming, you know, almost like it's something that people are looking to the sort of institutions in the current space to do. And, you know, not that I have an opinion either way, but like the OpenSea stuff. I think it's really, really powerful that you have a bunch of people who've been using a platform to, and I mean, like, you know, I don't think there's a single person in this room who hasn't spent several hours on it. And they are asking to own the platform, and it makes perfect sense. And you know, whether or not they do that isn't my decision to make, and there's probably a lot of good reasons they're doing whatever they're doing. But you know, for the company that comes after it and the company that comes after that, it's almost like when you saw like when there was environmental, you know, issues brought up around Ethereum, and people started actually like building on Tezos, for instance. Like, I don't know how to say it, but HEC, that great like hyper creative little NFT marketplace that exists on Tezos is like a perfect example of an emergent thing in reaction to a community of people who wanted something different. And so like, I look at the entire like Web3 and crypto community as wanting something different, you know, and the idea that if you know, Friends with Benefits was essentially like a trad company and we IPO'd and released stock, our members would then have to go buy it. And, you know, and 10 years ago, they would have been paying membership dues every month and all of these things. And essentially, they're just like, it's a renter's world. And I think our entire world right now is centered around this idea of like rentals, you know, like we're essentially nickel and diming people and there's rent seeking going on at every single corner. And then you come into Web3 and you realize that this isn't a cost. Like you're not, like when you buy into Friends with Benefits to become a member, you don't lose that money, you know, like that's your thing. And that's honestly, it's a bet on us. It's a bet on the community and it's a bet on yourself that you're gonna make it better. And it has all of the perfect dynamics for that not to go sour. And in a normal IPO, you don't know who's buying the coin. You know, it's like, or you don't know who's buying the shares. And they may not be buying them because they're a customer, you know, obviously. And it's mostly not happening like that. So an average customer who buys shares in, you know, it's hard to think of a bad example of a stock to buy right now because they're all up so high. But like, you know, if you loved pets.com in the 90s, you know, it didn't mean necessarily that, you know, every person who used pets.com is buying the stock, and it's a different game. And when you move to this community model, you have all of the power that got you to where you are, and then all of this new energy because these people now have a say in what's happening, and these people now can make the changes that they want to see and keep the idea intact, essentially.
I love that concept because I think what you're really
can we turn him on?
I can talk louder.
We could.
It's all good.
I think it's working.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, better. Cool. And so what you're really kind of saying is that you know, the different model in today's world with distributed networks and distributed systems and value on those systems is longevity, yes. Really, right? Like, because the system itself, the community is going to outlive the concept. Like, you know, the founders will come and go, right? Like, but the community evolves. And I think it's actually an interesting way, like I'm thinking in an agile way here, you ask the questions like, okay, what is kind of the product roadmap? What are we looking to do? I think that's a really good example, right? So software is no longer has a shelf life, right? These networks are going to continue to evolve. And I think it's really our job at Ledger to make sure that we have evolving software that supports these evolving networks and these evolving business models moving forward. And that's a really interesting kind of challenge to look at it from that viewpoint.
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to leave a few minutes for Q&A. So I think we've got room for maybe 1 or 2 questions. Feel free to raise your hand and someone will be handing you out a mic. Don't be shy. I know it's the last session of the day, but please.
If there's no questions, I can be selfish.
He wants to go.
Ask without the microphone.
Okay.
Oh. And no, not really. About some kind of gamification of the participation in the DAO. So do you have some kind of games that the person involved in the game process inside?
Yeah, so I mean, gamification is a really fun thing. It's something I've been thinking about for years, just as a model for understanding the modern world, because I think we've all been gamified. Most of our actions have been gamified, and some to great benefit and some not so much. But yeah, I mean, essentially, we try to build from a set of principles, like what do we want to incentivize within our community? Because if we set up the rails correctly, we can encourage a certain type of behavior. So like we currently run an incentives program inside that's a bit like a game, where we're like contributors, essentially people in our chat room inside Discord where we run everything, and soon outside of Discord at live events, their attendance and their participation and their contributions based on like reacts and mentions and replies to messages are all kind of tracked in this big sort of social graph that we then distribute tokens every season. And so there's been realities where like people just shit posting in our DGen chat have made close to like $8,000-9,000 in 3 months on a token that like they've been working for. Like this is essentially like the model for us, because we want our contributors to be earning, and we don't want like their value, the value that they create within our ecosystem, to be leaving somewhere else, or for 5 people who start talking really close and they get this little community. Like we don't want them to want to leave, because obviously like that's how we grow, and that's how this whole thing becomes great. And so that's like the softest version of a game that we have. A more I think tangible version would be what happened at our in Miami this last weekend at Art Basel, which was like an 8 of 8 NFT drop with wheat pasted posters with QR code from 8 different like wonderful artists across the fine art space and the sort of digital space. And if you were in Miami last weekend, you could run around and sort of get all of these. And then for holders of all 8, we're about to like offer some benefits and things like that, and bring new people into our community from outside. So yeah, but I think that it'll play a bigger part going forward, because I think that there's stuff that really benefits from gamification, like education around security. We've had rashes of spam, raids, and like every other Discord server has. And it really is like, it's so many people's first time interacting with blockchain technology at all, Ethereum at all, MetaMask, any of these different things. It's like, an average member in FWB, since it's not a purely financial community, it's mostly cultural, this is their first time. And so it's really hard actually to sort of like lay out how important some of these things are without gamifying them, I think. And so we're starting to think through that a lot more. But I think that education is probably the next place that we would look to get into that. I know that's near and dear to your heart as well.
Yeah, no, that's very cool. If there's no more questions, I can be pretty selfish and put you on the spot a little bit.
Cool. That's perfect.
Oh, time?
Nope.
All right. Really quickly, what would be your one of your biggest pain points in managing assets? And I hope my product team is listening.
Our biggest pain points in managing assets. Honestly, legitimizing a DAO in any sort of way and fundraising is, from what I hear, very difficult. That's not my department, because it is kind of funny, because internal product at FWB is a lot of community tooling and a lot of things like that, and then connecting between our sort of financial tools. I won't go into details because I don't actually know the details well enough, and I'm not educated enough to talk about them. But there are a lot of roadblocks and things to sort of overcome in the space of actually like legitimizing it down and being able to operate in the real world. Because right now it's all digital, and the second you have to pay an artist $20,000 for DJing your event, and they don't take USDC, and they do have to write it off on their taxes. So it's like it becomes a very big question. So it's something that we're currently dealing with, and I think a lot of other people will be soon too.
Cool, thanks. It sounds like it's legitimacy, and then underneath that, there's a ton of stuff that needs to happen for that legitimacy to be there. Cool.
Yes. Dexter, Alex, it's been great chatting with you. Please, so before we go to the party, please welcome back on stage ARIEL and Carl.
Is this working? Yay! All right, we're live. No, yours not working. I got the power now.
Hello. Yeah. Okay, hey everyone. Thank you for making it through the first day of Ledger Open with us. I hope that you enjoyed the day as much as we did. We've been so thrilled to see everyone's reactions online, watching on Twitter, but also in the rooms and the conversations that have been having so far. Just to remind everyone some of the exciting announcements that our leadership team made this morning. We now have the Ledger Crypto Life card that is coming, and I'm happy to say that actually within the first couple of hours, we got over 10,000 signups on the wait list. So that's pretty exciting. We're happy about that. Thank you. A lot of hard work from all the teams, so thank you again to the organizers of the event. We also announced our new Nano S Plus. We announced that blind signing is no more with NFT support and Rarible integration into Ledger Live, which is incredibly exciting. We announced FTX and Coinbase integration, so please stay tuned. These are just the beginning of things, and again, just one more shout out to Find Rod and Fabrice from the dev team if you haven't yet. But honestly, like, we're so grateful to you all for coming today and just taking so much thoughtful time with us. And we have an amazing day for you tomorrow as well. So plus a party tonight. So not bad. But what did you think was exciting about today?
Yeah, so you covered the Ledger part. I'm going to talk about the dev community and stuff that I thought was thrilling today. Because a lot of great talks, a lot of things were actually really, really packed. I think I really like the presentation from Julien in StackDAO and just reminding us like the gamification of the financial system, the good things and the bad things that goes along with it. So I thought that was really, really interesting. I love Rotem's talk about end-to-chain interoperability and all the research that's been through it. It was really thoughtful and really interesting and a good deep dive, actually. The panels were really interesting. A lot of good chats in there. This morning was about NFTs, and actually Alex talked about it and had a nice quote in the third panel actually today of how important it is to educate and let the world know, especially creators, like how to go and self-govern and how NFTs and the Web3 can really benefit creators.
Yeah, that's so important.
If you do it right, right?
Yes,
if
exactly.
You have self-sovereignty, wallets, you get your smart contracts. So actually, that was really interesting. What else do I have in that list? Zondax? I love it. TDD for nano apps. That was really interesting. So some good practices there for sure. I don't know. It's just so much to say. I think we'll probably do a wrap up as well tomorrow.
Yeah. I mean, I think what's
really
nice
cool.
is as the Ledger team, like we also are learning and. It's awesome to hear what you enjoyed today. The last thing that we have very, very quickly is, it was announced this morning from Charles that you can claim your NFT for being here, which we're really excited about. I hope everyone got an email in their inbox. If you didn't, let a Ledger team member know, and we'll make sure that you're set up to do that. But if you've seen some of the installations in the space, then you've gotten a sneak preview at what the NFT is. So I just quickly wanted to bring up the folks from Bonjour Labs who actually helped make this NFT so that they can very quickly tell us a little bit about it. So please welcome them. Hi, do you want to quickly introduce yourselves?
Sorry?
Do you want to quickly introduce yourselves?
Yeah, so hi everyone. We are very happy to be with you for such a great event. In a great place for a great brand. We are the interactive and visual creation studio Bonjour Lab. And our work is to create new storytelling using creative technology and using also generative design, which we use for this piece of art called Carved Currencies.
Can you tell folks in the audience and watching on Twitter what actually is the NFT that they're seeing and how the philosophy of what it's showing?
Yeah, so basically you have eight sculptures which represent cryptocurrencies. And the idea is to visualize the cryptocurrency market in real time. So each time we have tracking events on the transaction, we know the side, buy and sell. And when we have a buy, we add matter to the sculpture, depending on the volume of the transaction. And when we have a sell, we remove some matter on the sculpture. So basically you have a snapshot in real time of the cryptocurrency markets for 10 minutes, and after 10 minutes we reset everything. So we have this little snapshot every 10 minutes.
I mean, when I first heard about it, I think it's really exciting. Yeah, claps, I think, are totally worth it. You know, something that we're very proud of, even though obviously from the accent you can tell I'm not, is that Ledger is a French company, and we're so proud to be in Paris and to have incredible talent to work with to showcase what we're really trying to get more of the world to see. So I guess with that, thank you everyone for coming with day one. Parties in a couple hours, go take a nap, and come back in the morning fresh and ready. Thank you.